The topic of today's webinar is practice efficiency for accountants. There's going to be three presenters today. I'm really pleased to have Vicky Worker with us. She's a senior manager at Naylor, Lawrence and Associates in Palmerston North. Vicky is an advocate of Farm Focus, and she's going to be coordinating the question and answer session at the end. I've also got Denise here, my colleague. She is Farm Focus's sales manager, and I'm one of the training specialists within Farm Focus, and I also dairy farm in Greytown. The webinar will run for 40 minutes with plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. The webinar is going to be recorded for future reference. If you have any questions at all during the webinar, could you please use the chat box? For the question and answer session, due to the numbers involved in this webinar, all questions will be run through the chat box. So as we progress through the webinar, could you please put all your questions in there and we will address them at the end. If we run out of time, we will give a written response to all the other questions. And by the way, don't forget this webinar is considered professional development and can be counted towards your CPD hours. So I'll just hand it over to Denise for a quick update.
Good morning, everybody. Firstly, thank you all for your time. We know that it's very precious. It's great to be here today talking to our valued partners. We all know that it's pretty tough out there, and we hope you and your teams are getting support that you need as you're all interacting with the farmers daily and hearing their stories and supporting your clients. Our shared clients need us to work together effectively to give them the best support that we can in these trying times. That is really the basis of this webinar, helping to give you clear information on how you can work in Farm Focus so you can provide support to our joint clients. So just a little bit of a trip down memory lane. Farm Focus was specifically built for farming businesses. It first began in the Wairarapa in the 1980s, and it was a hard time then in the farming industry with high interest rates and tight margins. Our founders saw a real need for farmers to understand their financial position and budget to build resilient farming businesses that could survive those tough times and come out the other side. The first iteration of our software was posted out on snail mail on a floppy disk before we even had dial-up internet. Over the years, we've grown and developed to meet the needs of our farmers. We are a passionate bunch, from the development team to customer support, still based here in Masterton, and are committed to supporting our farmers today, just as we were over the last 40 years. Just a quick reminder that we have a call centre, which we know to be incredibly valuable. Please do call for help when you need it, and our support team will be more than happy to take your call. So the 2024 forecasts across sheep and beef and dairy are the tightest that we've seen in many years. Budgets are under more scrutiny than ever for farmers that are holding debt. Banks have backed out of the budgeting process, leaving the obligation and opportunity to fall with the farmer and engaged accountants. We are seeing a significant margin squeeze, making cash flow management and budgeting fundamental to success. Touching on emissions quickly, the government is not clear on the emissions direction, which is feeding also into farmer confidence. Emissions is being driven offshore across Europe, with Rabobank being the most progressive and the other banks catching up quickly. Preferential lending, with most banks offering green loans that require additional reporting and expense tracking, are really taking off. Reporting is exploding across all aspects of farming, and farmers want to do it once and do it well. This is really an opportunity for accountants to move squarely into the advisory space. The reporting requirements is driving product integration and data sharing across our sector. Farm Focus is working with lots of people across the sector, including Rabo, ANZ, ASB, BNZ, Farm IQ, Resolution, Beef and Lamb New Zealand, and Dairy NZ, to name a few, and of course the very important people on this call. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jane to run you through the rest of the webinar.
Thanks so much, Denise. That's great. Well, the aim of today's webinar is to improve the efficiency using Farm Focus for your year-end processing. As a way of setting the scene, Farm Focus wants to be part of the ecosystem and be the best cash flow it can be, and it will continue to integrate with other sources. While Farm Focus is the best management tool for farmers, we do understand accountants are a very important part of the team, and we need to support you in your journey. Farm Focus has a direct export file with all main general ledgers, be it Xero, MYOB, CCHI Firm, and APS. But data can be fed into any general ledger using the Accountant's Annual Report, or the AAR, which I will refer during the webinar. So how can we make your life easier? Well, first, you need access with appropriate authorities to your client's Farm Focus accounts. You will require organisational admin access or greater. We are working at improving this process for you as well. Workspaces will be released later in the year. This will give all professional organisations their own workspace. Once the Farm Focus client has given you appropriate permissions, you will be able to manage all your staff's access to any database or farm within your firm's workspace. Workspaces will also offer increased security and privacy for your clients. Now, data integrity is crucial in Farm Focus. Data integrity is achieved by automated data capture. That's by using bank feeds, connectors, supplier feeds, and the use of the invoice scanner, as information comes directly from the source. Data integrity is also achieved by coding tools within Farm Focus. These include coding rules, split coding rules, bulk coding, and merging, to name a few. And data integrity is also achieved by getting your clients to do some of the checks themselves so that the data that comes to you is as clean as possible. Now, this is a triple win. It's a win for accountants as it saves you time. Getting farmers to do the majority of the cleanup allows you to focus on your advisory role. It's a win for farmers as they get the most out of Farm Focus and they understand their businesses in more detail. And it's a win, of course, for Farm Focus as both clients and accountants see the benefits in their investment in Farm Focus. We are constantly working to improve data integrity while reducing the manual input required by farmers through increasing the direct feeds with suppliers and improving the coding features in Farm Focus. Now, we promote farmers do 5 things to make the end of the financial year seamless and make their data as clean as possible before they send it to you. We then guide them on how to undertake these steps. So this slide outlines the 5 steps that we recommend farmers undertake. First, we'd like your clients to check their income and expenses are in the correct financial year. So this is ensuring the invoice date is in the appropriate year. Next, we want clients to check their needs action screen is free of any invoices or bank transactions from the last financial year. We also want your clients to check that their Farm Focus balance and the bank balance are the same on the last day of the financial year. And for their clients to check their closing livestock tallies are correct, or at least they know them. And the final thing is for clients to check their coding is correct. And there are 2 sorts of coding errors we discuss. That's inconsistent coding and incorrect GST treatment. Now, we have run a webinar on this and had really good attendance and a great response. And we've also developed a Help Centre resource. Now, this webinar is available free of charge on our website, and we recommend that you get your clients to watch this webinar or at least read the Help Centre resource before they send their end of financial year accounts to you. And this slide here contains the link to the webinar and the Help Centre resource. The next thing we want to talk about is I want to talk about you, the accountants, and how we can streamline the year-end process. Again, we've got 7 steps here that we'd like you to follow or think is best practice to follow. I'm not going to read these out loud as we're going to go through them in more detail this morning. So the first thing we'd like you to do is check your needs action screen is free of any invoices or bank transactions from last financial year. Now, hopefully your clients have done this for you. But what is particularly important is if your clients have rogue invoices. And my definition of a rogue invoice are invoices that have been coded, and then rather than being matched, the client has also coded the bank transaction. Now, this will cause double counting at the end of the financial year. And these rogue invoices need to be dealt with. So if your client is payment basis for GST, please save the attachment to the transaction in the completed screen so they are not lost. If your client is invoice basis for GST, the best option is to ring our customer success team and we will work with you to resolve these invoices. You must, however, deal with these rogue invoices before you export to your general ledger. We do have a Help Centre resource on this topic if you require further information. Now, we do acknowledge that historically this has been very frustrating for you and caused heaps of headaches, but we have been educating our farmers in this area and our customer success team have noticed a vast improvement here. The next thing we need to do is check if any new codes have been added. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move into the demonstration data to demonstrate this. So just bear with me for a few seconds. Here we are in our demonstration data. So what we need to do to check if any new codes have been added is we run our AAR report or accounts annual report. So you go into reports and then scroll down here into your accounts annual report. Now you need to view by either accrual view or payment date, whatever is correct for your client, and then you can select the date range, either a financial year or there's the ability to do a custom date range, and then apply. Go into section 2, which is the summary section. Now scroll through this report and you'll quickly spot the red. The green shows that mapping has occurred, and the red signifies an accounting code has not yet been mapped in settings. Now you could do this check in the ABC report or analysis by code report, but we believe the AAR is a better option as you do not get the noise of all the coding lines. So if you haven't got a map to your report, you need to go into settings, codes, farm codes, and enter your accounting code into the income or expense against the corresponding farm focus line. So for example, here we don't have accounting code for grazing income, so I'll just add that now. Now make sure everything is mapped, therefore nothing should go into the suspense code in your general ledger file. Now in Farm Focus, farmers do have the ability to customize their code list to meet their own personal management reporting requirements. But these can be easily mapped to your general ledger, and you can choose to consolidate these at a category level or leave them at an extended code level. Now, in developing this webinar, we spoke to a number of accounting firms, and there is a difference of opinion here. Some chose to consolidate at a category level, while others preferred the extended code level. Now, there is no right or wrong answer, but just make sure everything is mapped. As an aside, can you just also check that your customers have got the correct type? An income code should have the type income and an expense the type expense. Now this is especially important if a client have created new codes. Now while we're in settings codes, what I suggest you do too is just while you're here is to look at your general ledger account codes as well and make sure you've mapped your bank account, accounts payable, receivable, suspense code and tax code, and you do it in here. The next thing we need to do is check that everything is balanced. To do that, you need to go to your Needs Action screen and your Balancing screen, Balancing tab here. The green line here shows you where you're balanced to. So in this case, I'm balanced to the 30th of June. Where the green line stops is a good indicator of where a balancing issue has occurred. So for this instance, any balancing issue is occurring after the 30th of June. So this allows you to pinpoint where you should start looking. Now, if you are not balanced, it's generally because of two things. First of all, your client may have added a manual entry that didn't occur at the bank. Now, this is easily recognisable because you'll see the words manual entry. Now, this is a demonstration database, so I've manually entered all my transactions, but if your clients have got bank feeds, this will say bank feed here, so a manual entry is easily identifiable. Now, the second reason your clients may not be balanced is because they may have accidentally deleted a transaction that occurred in the bank. If that is the case, all you need to do is go up here into your deleted tab, click into that, and any deleted bank transactions will be shown here. There'll be 3 dots here, and select that and choose Restore, and the bank transaction will be restored. Now, if your clients have got bank feeds, they should always be balanced, providing, of course, they haven't added any manual entries or deleted any bank transactions in error. But again, this is something that our Help Centre is really hot on. We're constantly educating our farmers not to edit their bank transactions, because bank transactions in Farm Focus should mirror what happens at the bank. So the next step, or step 4, is we ask you to check your last year's closing and this year's opening bank balances, accounts payable and accounts receivable are the same. You can do this by checking your last year's accountant's annual report that you've already saved and on file and compare it to this year's accountant's annual report. If last year's balances are not right, you'll have to do some investigation, but it's most likely that your clients have put a backdated entry in or edited an historical transaction. The next thing you need to do is check the coding is correct. And again, hopefully your clients have done this for you. There are a lot of ways you can do this. And again, there is no right or wrong answer. You can look at the cash flow or the ABC report. To do this, you go into Reports, ABC report. Again, you select your financial year, whether you want to look at by payment or accrual basis, and apply. And what you can do is you can check at the section level that it makes sense, then at the category level, the extended code level, and the event level. Now, if there is a major issue with coding, you can usually just pick it up here by running your eye down the report and doing a basic sensibility check. Now, we really encourage you to fix coding errors in Farm Focus, as we want to keep the General Ledger and Farm Focus systems in line. Although we do understand it is quicker to fix in the General Ledger, you are not teaching your clients good habits. Now, I'm sure you're aware that you can make changes easily within Farm Focus by going into the Needs Action screen, the Completed screen, check your encoded lines. I'm just going to sort here, and you can just make a change to coding here by saying, I've got here at the moment, this is contract spraying. It's actually related to, this should have been pasture renewal spraying. I can just quickly change my code here. Now, while we're in the completed screen, can I just point out a few other things of interest? Now, if your client is a good user of Farm Focus and the codes you require and for codes that you require supporting documents for, such as your insurance or your any assets purchased or any hire purchases or dairy income, you can check your client has attached the invoice already so that you can refer back to that later. So for this instance, you can either search using the code, or you can just use our search function here. I'm going to search insurance, and here is my annual invoice for my insurance. And you can see here that my client has attached an invoice because I've got this little paper clip with one here. So I can download this for future reference, and I don't need to go back and ask my client for it. Also, I'm going to get rid of this search now and go into my transaction page here. Now, just as a part of the end of year process, webinar we did with farmers, we did encourage farmers to attach all additional information you as the accountant might need for the end of the financial year process, such as the last bank statement, any dividend statements, etc., to the last statement or the last transaction for the financial year. So what we ask clients to do or farmers to do is to attach here, either using the browse or drag and drop, and you can attach as many attachments as you like here. And then what we encourage the farmers to do is under reference, put plus end of financial year here and save it. And see now here at the end of the financial year under reference, I've got at least 2 transactions or 2 attachments. So I would get your client to attach all the necessary information you need for the end of the year here. And by adding plus end of financial year, you know that all those additional information is just sitting right here, ready for you to download. We're actually also starting to encourage our beta clients on the last day of the month to also attach the bank statement for that month. So here you'll see I've put plus the April bank statement, and you can see here I've got 2 attachments. One is for the meat company invoice and the other would be the bank statement for that year. Now, I'm sure you're aware you can attach as many documents as you like to a transaction, and you can do this retrospectively in the completed page as I've done here. So, for example, if your clients have purchased something by hire purchase and they've got a hire purchase contract, or perhaps they've got a new grazing contract, or they've, or they've done an insurance claim, you can attach all that additional information to Farm Focus. So you've got it here to refer back to later, and it also helps create a paperless work environment. So sorry, I did digress there a little bit. Let's go back to checking our codes are correct. Now, if your clients don't know they're making a mistake, then they'll continue to make these mistakes. And from our perspective, we are really, really interested to understand what the common mistakes your farmers are making. Because what I want to do is I want to run a webinar around these common mistakes at the end of the financial year next year, so we can educate our farmers to do better. So what I would love you to do is in the chat box, potentially, if you could just let me know what some of the common mistakes are your farmers are making, or email us so that I can run a webinar to address those and educate our farmers for next year. So why is it that Farm Focus is so hot on changes being made in Farm Focus? Well, a really powerful component of Farm Focus is the ability to create budgets and reports. And we know that this year in particular, budgeting is so important. But this relies on the coding being correct and consistent. The value of these reports is lost if coding is correct, or more importantly, your client's high-level code structure is incorrect. For example, when I did the training sessions around the country, I did notice that several farmers had their drawings under farm expenses. Now, if this is the case, could you please correct the structure? And you can do this easily by going into settings, codes, farm codes, and you can just pick up and drag and drop. I'm not going to change mine here because my coding structure is correct. Now, alternatively, if you don't want to do this yourself for your clients, could you get your clients to ring our customer success team? We are happy to work with you and with your clients to get the structure correct, because this structure here within our farm codes is the backbone of Farm Focus, and it underpins everything. And the correct code structure is fundamental for farmers having meaningful information and reports. So we recommend you make changes in Farm Focus so it flows through into the general ledger. And if any changes are made in the general ledger, we'd really appreciate it if they are mirrored back into Farm Focus, because we both want to upskill and empower our clients. And if your clients' budgets and reports are correct, it allows you as the accountant to act more in your advisory capacity. Now, we are aware that many of our medium and large companies outsource the end of financial year process, so they'll be doing all their checks in the general ledger. If this is the case, could you please tell your clients what they're doing wrong, or better still, show them how they can make their changes in Farm Focus and encourage them to make these changes so their data is more rich and powerful and their budget's correct. So the sixth thing we like to do is for you to print your accountant's annual report and keep it. So save a copy of this report. That way you have a hard copy, or at least a copy on file, in case your client makes any changes after you have completed the end of year process. You will use this report next year when you check last year's closing and this year's opening balances are the same. So again, to do that, go into reports, go into your accountant's annual report, ensure you've got the correct view in the financial year. But what you should do here is also select display all. And in doing so, this ensures that you're not having to download all the sections because they're all just sitting here in one place. So now you've done all the checks and you've printed and saved your AAR, you are ready to create a file to be exported from Farm Focus and imported into your general ledger. So exporting to general ledger. To do that, once again, you go into reports and export to general ledger. You need to select the general ledger you want to export to, the financial year. So I'm going to say last financial year. You can actually export at tag level if you like, but you can also export by accrual view or payment date. Now, this is where we saw a lot of variation between accounting firms when we were developing this webinar. Some ran in accrual view and others in payment date. Now, our recommendation is to always run in accrual view. However, running in accrual mode, you do need to be confident that the client is putting in the correct invoice date. Now, if your farmers are using connectors, uploading CSV files, and using the invoice scanner, they should always have the correct invoice date because the information is coming from the source, and therefore you will know your accruals will also be correct. The other advantage of running in accrual mode is that it will save you time as you're not having to manually add a journal entry for your accounts receivable and accounts payable for the selected period, unless of course your client does not record all their APs and ARs in Farm Focus. But it also means you have the detail of all your ARs and APs, which is helpful when you're reviewing your accounts. Now you can confirm the accruals in the export to GL file by comparing them back against section 5 of your AAR. So run your eye over your export file and check that nothing is going into your suspense file, and if it is, fix it up. Once you are happy, you can export from Farm Focus to your general ledger by just selecting the export or clicking on the export button here. Now you will need to do a manual entry for your opening APs and ARs as they are currently not included in the file. If you do run by cash mode, you will need to do a manual journal entry for your APs and your ARs. Remembering you can get this information from section 5 of your accountant's annual report. Now, whether you run by cash mode or accrual mode, it does depend on your client and how they are capturing their data in Farm Focus. But at the end of the day, help us to educate your clients to focus on coding invoices rather than bank transactions and using the automated data capture, such as invoice scanner, connectors, and uploading CSV files, so their invoice date is correct. Now, if your clients are coding bank transactions, it does require additional work for them and for you, and that's only the start. There are so many additional benefits for farmers to focus on the invoices. For example, there's the powerful daily bank balance. So farmers are alerted if they're going to exceed their overdraft on any particular day in the current month. It also allows you to code your invoices. So also, if farmers code their invoices, they know the invoice is correct before they pay it. They also have the ability to create batch payments and load those directly into internet banking. And now GST only takes a matter of minutes as you've done all the work at a time convenient to you. So please help us to help you. Now, I just want to briefly touch on livestock. It does deserve a special mention. And again, data integrity is key for livestock. We are aware that many of our farmers are not using the farm-focused livestock reconciliation as intended. The two main issues we're seeing is farmers are not adding their non-financial livestock events, and farmers are not coding stock to the correct stock category. We are addressing this. We have developed a new resource on ageing, and I will be running a webinar shortly on creating and managing a livestock grid. Now, if your client's livestock grid is really messed up, when doing their accounts this year, could you please adjust their opening numbers in this financial year and their working plan to be the same as their closing numbers from last year? To do that, if you go into plan, into the working plan, and into the livestock grid here, you can actually just make changes to numbers, the closing numbers. So here's the closing numbers from last year and the opening this year. You can just make these changes right here and save, and then the changes will be pulled through here. You will get this little red warning here. This is just warning you, telling you that your closing numbers from last year differ to your opening numbers from this year, and it's only a warning, nothing else. But if you do this for your clients, it means that your farmers can draw a line in the sand and they can start this year's livestock reconciliation on the right foot. Livestock valuations. Now, Farm Focus currently doesn't have a livestock valuation tool. Most accountants have their own system for valuations. Some use CCH, others use Figured, or they've got your own spreadsheets. Now, Farm Focus is aware that we need to make the accountant's journey as easy as possible. And we are investigating creating a livestock valuation tool. And we're taking this through the prioritisation process at the moment. So while we're here, just let's have a quick look at some reports that I think might be useful for your clients at this time of year. These reports will help your clients see the benefits of all the coding that they've done during the year and also the power of Farm Focus. So there's two reports at the end of the financial year that I'm particularly interested in. The first report is the variance report. So I go into reports, into variance. Now, your variance report can be used in so many ways, but in this instance, at the end of the financial year, I would recommend that your clients look at their actuals from last financial year and compare it to the actuals from the previous financial year. And when you do this, have a look. It's really interesting reading for your clients and for them, and especially the overs and unders here. The other report that I find really interesting is my trends report. So to find the trends report, again, reports and trends. Now, the trends reports looked at the macro trends over a 5-year period. Again, this report can be used in so many different ways, but at the end of the financial year, we would recommend farmers compare this year's actuals against the last 4 actuals to see if there are any disruptions in trends. Now I'm going to apply that here. Now this is demonstration data. I've only got 1 year of data. Your clients would have 5 years of data. There are so many great reports within Farm Focus for you and your farmers at your fingertips. Now, it is amazing the number of farmers who don't use these reports, yet they've done all the hard work by coding their invoices correctly and consistently throughout the year. And the information for these reports is just sitting in here ready to be looked at. Now, I haven't got time to go through all these reports now. I will be doing a webinar later in this year, drilling into these reports. But in the interim, if you haven't already, take a look. Another report that I'm really interested in, I think it's the jewel of our crown, is our economic farm surplus report. So if you haven't looked at that report, I would encourage you to do so. So how can Farm Focus help you? Well, as Denise said, we have an outstanding customer success team or support team that are available for you and your clients free of charge. Please use our help centre, our chat bubble, or call and talk to one of our friendly customer success team. We are here to help you. We are constantly making improvements to farm focus, and we have a prioritisation process to aid us in that. We are listening to our customers, and gathering customer feedback is really important to us. And one of the most regarded tools we have is Canny, where customers can suggest and vote on new features. To do that, go into this question mark here and go into feature request. Now, we always look at this when we do our prioritisation process. We are also stepping up our education and training. We've run face-to-face seminars this year across the regions, and we had really good attendance and feedback. So much so, we're going to be running another session of seminars in November to new regions. We are running monthly webinars, and we are continuing to improve our help centre. And I'm also going to be starting to create short videos for our socials, no more than 5 minutes, on issues we have identified where clients are not getting the most out of Farm Focus. So watch out for those. So thanks for your time. Let's now move to the chat box and see what questions we have. What I will do now is I'm going to move back to pass it over to Vicky Worker, who is going to be addressing these questions along with my colleague here at Farm Focus. So questions from the chat box.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. If you've been monitoring the chat box, there's been a few queries around workspaces. So if we start from the top, does Workspace work with only those subscriptions we hold? Our clients all hold ownership of their own subscriptions. So the answer to that one is that Workspaces will allow you to manage your team's access sorry, to all your clients' databases. It doesn't matter whether you're the owner or not. Someone's also suggested that we send the links to the end of year processes out to you for your clients. I think that's a great idea. So we'll look at putting together a pack to email out to everyone that's registered for this webinar. Also some questions around correcting coding on coded transactions. If a transaction has been included in a finalised GST report, we do currently have stops in place to prevent you from changing those types. Someone's commented that we should just be able to edit the GST type and then it goes into the next GST return. In a way, Farm Focus does do that. It does require that you create a reversal transaction, and then that reversal goes into the next GST return, correcting the GST treatment. Vicky, there's a question that might be suited to you here. When should you print the AAR? I've noticed AR and AP changes depending on when the report is printed and invoices are paid. Do you have a recommendation?
Yes, with the accountant's report, the ARs and APs will leave out the unpaid debtors and creditors. So in your needs action screen, I would not print my AAR report until such time as all the accounts have been actually physically matched up until the end of the financial year, because otherwise those amounts unmatched and unpaid won't pull through into your debtors and creditors. So they may be sitting there because the client has created them inaccurately, in which case you may need to actually delete the invoice that's sitting there, or else they might be something that is still actually physically waiting to be paid, in which case you would need to bring it in as a manual entry if you're exporting on an accrual basis. Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of questions for me, but from my point of view, I really recommend that you do export in an accrual basis. I find to have that information in the general ledger, in your client's general ledger on whatever software you're using, is invaluable to have the detail of the debtors and creditors. It also means that you're not having to do manual entries for your debtors and your creditors and your reversals, and it's pretty seamless. And I think it only takes once you've got all your mapping codes in, you can have all your full ledger and your debtors and creditors all in your client ledger within, 5-10 minutes, which is pretty quick.
Cool, thanks for that, Vicky.
If anybody else has got any more questions, just put them in the chat box. And in answer to that, no, I don't think they pull through into your ledger, into your export. Pretty sure they don't. I can check that, but no.
I can answer that one for you, Joshua, via email. We'll confirm that.
So everybody, if they're doing exports, they just need to remember that they need to put in their opening debtor and creditor figure to balance their bank. Otherwise it won't balance. And if you're doing a zero export, you also have to enter in the total of your closing debtors and creditors as well, because that total's not in there, but your debtors and creditors individual entries will be. So yeah, I can, if people are interested and want to know a bit more information about doing exports into Xero, I've actually got a document that I've done up if people are interested in hearing that or seeing a copy. Okay.
Oh, great. Well, it looks like that we've got no other questions. Oh, I haven't shared my screen properly. So thank you, everybody, for your time. Don't forget, please call our help centre if you've got any questions. Use our chat bubble. And I am generally interested to know what some of the common errors are you're seeing with your clients so that I can better educate them for future years. So if you could just put those into the chat box or email Farm Focus or call our help centre, that would be really valuable. Vicky, thank you so much for your, there's no more questions that have come through?
Not that need to be discussed online.
Nothing, great. Hey, well, thank you so much, everybody, and a special thanks to Vicky for doing these questions and answers and helping us. We really do appreciate it. And until next time, bye for now. So thanks very much, everybody. Vicky, you're going to say goodbye?
Goodbye, everybody. Just one last thing, if you are exporting to Xero, we've found that when you're doing your mapping, if you're putting your quantities into your reference field, that comes through pretty well and means that you can easily add up your tallies within your Xero export and your reports. So that's just a little tip.
Awesome.
Okay, bye.
Thanks so much, Vicky, and everybody. Bye for now. And I'm sure we'll be having another webinar in the near future. So thanks very much, everybody.